Which scary movie has scared you the most? Do the scenes in The Exorcist that make you want to throw up make your blood boil? Or maybe Freddy's first appearance in The Nightmare on Elm Street made you hide your head under the covers? No matter what, scary movies have been good to us over the years. They are a good idea for a date night or a fun weekend activity, but not all scary movies are the same. Today in this video we're going to discuss top 10 scariest movies of all time. However, before we begin our countdown, we would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel and also press the bell icon. Let's get started. Number 10. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978. In the history of horror movies, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is one of a kind. Since the 1950s, when it first became famous, the film has been made in almost every decade. What's most interesting is how each version of the classic touches on important social and political issues of the time it was made. The original movie was a comment on communism and the McCarthy witch hunts. The 1970s version was a metaphor for Watergate and distrust of the government. Abel Ferrara's brilliant Body Snatchers was a comment on both the American military and AIDS. Nicole Kidman's 2007 movie, The Invasion, was about the Iraq War and global terrorism. Even now, a new version is being made. Number 9. Hereditary, 2018. With Hereditary, Ari Aster made a name for himself in the long history of horror movies. He made a movie about possession that was different from all the Exorcist copies, and he made a haunting movie about the destruction of a suburban family, a frequent horror theme. He shows how a family slowly falls apart because of loss, grief, anger, and supernatural events, with the help of Toni Collette's Oscar-worthy performance. Hereditary has a lot of intense, surprising, and disturbing scenes. So it could be argued that it is one of the most emotionally scaring horror movies. Even though it may have been overhyped, there's no doubt that it contributed to the new wave of elevated horror films that are being made today. These films are some of the most exciting and unique in all of film. It will leave you with grotesque images that will keep coming back to you. Number 8. Carnival of Souls, 1962. In Carnival of Souls, a woman has a mental breakdown after a car accident. She moves to a new town to try to start over, but she is haunted by dark figures and scared away by aggressive men. The movie is important for many reasons. It was one of the first horror movies to be told from a woman's point of view and follow a woman who goes against social norms and fights back against the male gaze that is always on her. It was also one of the first mainstream movies that was completely independent, and not just in the horror genre. Harold Herc Harvey, who had mostly been hired to make educational and industrial short films, made Carnival of Souls for only $33,000. Number 7. The Exorcist, 1973. The Exorcist set the standard for many possession movies that came out after it came out in 1973. A movie about a sweet 12-year-old girl named Regan, Linda Blair, who becomes possessed after an old priest accidentally lets out a demon, might have seemed like a typical B-movie plot, but it showed how well-done horror can be praised by critics and do well at the box office. As is often the case with scary movies, the movie both scared and drew people to it at the same time. With The Exorcist, though, people's reactions were more extreme than what theaters had seen before. People threw up and passed out, and one woman in New York is said to have had a miscarriage during a showing. These strong reactions from the audience led to protests, and theaters put Exorcist-themed barf bags in the bathrooms. Who had mostly been hired to make educational and industrial short films, made Carnival of Souls for only $33,000. Number 6. Dawn of the Dead, 1978. This movie is a masterpiece because of its stark black and white photography, smart racial politics, haunting images, and bleak ending. But you could say that Dawn of the Dead is not only better, but also scarier and more important. Dawn of the Dead could run because Night of the Living Dead walked. In George Romero's sequel, it's the first time he really uses the zombie as a metaphor, which is something he'd do in a few more movies after this one. Dawn of the Dead is almost a Marxist polemic because it pits the zombies from the upper class against the heroes from the working class in a mall, which is a kind of claustrophobic capitalist utopia. Number 5. Halloween, 1978. John Carpenter brought the first-person killer with a knife style of Italian giallo films to American audiences and ran with it in Halloween. Or, in the case of Michael Myers, walked ominously slow with it. The movie, which was originally called The Babysitter Murders, is about how Michael Myers preys on teenage girls on the holiday of the same name until he meets Laurie Strode, a naive victim who turns out to be a hero. The movie helped start one of the most important horror franchises ever because it created many of the genre's tropes, such as the unkillable villain and the iconic use of synthesizers. However, the final girl horror trope is the one that has stuck with people the most. Number 4. The Shining, 1980. Stanley Kubrick did a great job making The Shining, a movie based on Stephen King's book of the same name. It's about a writer who goes crazy while staying at a haunted hotel when it's not busy. The more the movie goes on, the more lonely Jack Torrance, Jack Nicholson, gets. Fans still quote the immortal lines, "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy," and "Ridge Rum." The movie is an extreme case of family problems caused by a bad balance between work and home life. The film's visuals and scary scenes will stay in people's minds forever because of how well they were made. Number 3. Alien, 1979. Alien by Ridley Scott isn't your typical horror movie because it's simple, has science fiction elements, and takes place entirely in space. One could even say that it's more of a sci-fi movie than a horror movie. It is a great example of how to slowly build up tension, give great jump scares, and make gross body horror. From the first scene of lonely space travel, where there is a piercing silence, the tension is clear. Number 2. Psycho, 1960. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is about a man's, Anthony Perkins, horrifying obsession with his mother and the Freudian dangers of parents who don't let their kids be independent adults because they're afraid of empty nest syndrome. Without this movie, there would be no American slasher genre. The movie is known for its shocking nihilism, the fact that it stopped following the main character halfway through, and its disturbing sense of unease, which led to a whole new wave of atmospheric horror. Don't forget the famous shower scene, which had the first-person stabbing angle that became a staple of great giallo horror movies and slasher movies in the 1980s. Number 1. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a look at the strange and macabre. It starts with the murders of a group of kids in the 1970s, which are used as a springboard for something important and scary. Based on the themes of Wes Craven's The Last House on the Left from 1972, this movie looks at the most extreme version of American freedom and the essence of cult. It came out 5 years after the Manson murders in 1969 and 1 year before the Vietnam War ended in 1975. Hooper's perversion of the nuclear family mirrored both the popularity of cults among Americans at home and the senseless, brutal violence of imperialism abroad. That's it for today. We hope you found our video interesting. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with others. Also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new uploads. In the end, thanks for watching and see you next time.